Hello and welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. It's been a week and a half since we've come out with you with a video. We're finally both back on the mic together, which is great. Matt, how's it going?
I'm doing good, man.
Yeah, we get to spend some time together. My brother's bachelor party over the weekend, and we had the 4th of July, so we had some time off. But we're going to be coming at you with some more content, honestly. So we're going to be, comparing some guys that are in similar tiers. I'm excited to look at the wide receivers, obviously, and we're going to be looking at rounds 5 through 8, and then late round picks. So rankings, risers and fallers, all that type of stuff. The drafts really are right around the corner. All right, let's get this thing started. So we're going to start here. And so, obviously with Jamar Chase going in those first 3 picks, that makes it pretty nice for me in terms of who I'm going to be able to get, because I'm a proponent of getting one of the top three quarterbacks, even in 10-team leagues this year, which is very different than the strategy that we advised last year. So getting Daniels for me here feels a little bit like a slam dunk. Obviously, you can go Justin Jefferson if you want the receiver. I do have him as my wide receiver too. I have moved him behind Chase reluctantly. But that, I guess, plays into why I'm not so big on taking Chase way up high, is because I'm still not sure that he could easily take a tiny step back, and Jefferson be great this year with McCarthy. So I'm looking to lock in the quarterbacks early, and I feel really good about how the receivers play out in the next couple rounds.
Yeah, and there's a chance in our league that you're going to be picking from the 4 spot. So I think that's a really good spot in this format. And just looking who else fell. Bijan, I'm so close to moving Bijan up to my RB1. I haven't put it in paper yet, but it is coming. And then we see Jefferson off the board. And then for me here, it's pretty clear that I am going to go CeeDee Lamb, being that it is a 3 wide receiver format. Getting someone in my top tier is not something I'm going to pass up on.
Yeah, I like the Lamb pick. I would probably take him as early as 6 in this format. I wouldn't take him over Jefferson yet, but I would take him over Burrow and Bijan.
Yeah, and now that the Hurts tier is gone, we move into like the mini tier with Mahomes and Baker Mayfield. And to me personally, as much as I do prefer Mahomes in Superflex just to provide that stability, there's just so much depth, especially in the early teens, that I am a fan of. So I'm definitely going to pass on that position and see who's available. At running back, we've got CMC, who is my RB4, Genty, Henry, Achane. So I just moved Achane 1 spot up over Genty. However, at the wide receiver position, I know I'm not quite as high as you are on him, but he's moving his way up. But however, at wide receiver, Puka Nacua, he's my number 4 wide receiver. So to be able to get my number 3 and number 4 wide receiver is one of the reasons why I actually kind of like the latter half of the draft in this spot, assuming I'm going to miss out on those top tier of quarterbacks and Jamar Chase. I think there's some serious value in this area.
Yeah, and I like the Puka pick, and it's unfortunate because I feel like Puka would have a chance to fall if it wasn't you and me drafting. If you're going to look to do this in our regular draft, that's a little bit unfortunate, because you could see here, right, the rest of the wide receivers still ended up making it down to me. Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas, and Nico, right? That's where we kind of tiered this, and that's where I'm going to go here, right? I have Amon-Ra as my number 5 wide receiver, so not too much further behind Puka. I just think Puka has incredible upside. Obviously, we've seen McVay, number 1, just be incredibly, incredibly good. But Amon-Ra is somebody that we've seen be stable and good, wide receiver 3, both of the last 2 seasons. So I do expect him to continue to be one of those top 5 receivers. So the draft falls interestingly to me here, right? Because I got Ladd and AJ Brown. That's normally where I would be looking to go, because Devon Achane is normally not there, right? And I have Achane as my running back 4 on the season. And, as much as I want to get in on Ladd and AJ Brown, because I do really like that area of the wide receiver tier, right? When getting 2 of the top 11 has been critical for me, really, when I take a quarterback with my first pick. But for the purposes of this mock and to check in on how it looks, I'm going to take Devon Achane as my hero RB and maybe wait even further than I normally do to pick my first running back.
I was hoping you were going to pass on him. Dang it. Okay, good pick. I do like that quite a bit. So for me, I'm not a Bo Nix guy, but again, kind of what I preached in round 2. Now for me, I do have AJ Brown a tier ahead of the next available wide receivers. So, we're going to make a video on AJ Brown versus Drake London versus Ladd McConkey, and I do think there's a clear separation between those guys in the next tier. So that makes this pick pretty obvious for me. and definitely leaning into the wide receiver position here. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the board shakes out, but that's going to be a tough trio to beat.
Yeah, definitely. Like getting AJ Brown is such a wild card too in terms of upside in the third round because he's never gone that late in any of the last 4 years or so. So it's going to be interesting to see if any level of passing volume comes back in this offense, and even if it doesn't, as long as he stays healthy all year, because last year he dealt with that hamstring injury for 6 weeks, but just feels like you're getting an incredible bargain on him down at the end of the third round.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And then now, man, Baker keeps falling to me and kind of tempting me here a little bit. So it's for me, it's between he and Chase Brown. Chase Brown is someone earlier in the offseason that I kind of tried to talk myself out of. I know we were kind of going back and forth on this, but it's just getting harder and harder, especially just given the way that the Cincinnati team's going to look and how great he was last year. And, even if that workload doesn't stay at like 90%, like he's going to be so involved in the passing game. This offense is going to be scoring a ton of points, and he's still the type of player that I can feel comfortable with, very comfortable with.
So unfortunately, between picks, a ton of quarterbacks go off, and Jackson Smith and Jigba go off. So definitely not going back to the quarterback position after it was just kind of taken down there. But somebody that I do really think is worth a top 12 pick at wide receiver that isn't getting picked that way is Rashee Rice. So he's had a lot of good reviews coming out of practice, and I really expect that if the knee shows out well and he gets in any preseason games, that he's going to continue to rocket up rankings. So I'm going to go ahead and take the free space on the board here and take Rashee Rice. You guys obviously saw that I loved him in the breakdown video I did of like early, late, and in the middle mock drafts. So I get him on a lot of my teams. I do.
Yeah, I like that pick. And I think come August, we'll continue to see him rise. Now, this presents a little bit of an interesting dilemma for me because I do want to lock in a quarterback. And there are some quarterbacks that, I personally really like on this board. I was kind of toying around with, some of my rankings before this. And I still have Drake May above Goff and Purdy. However, given the fact that it is Superflex and it's my first quarterback, I do want to go with a little bit more stability here. Obviously, May has, sky high upside. We know about his rushing ability. We know this offense is, making some solid improvements around him. But, for me, Jared Goff, he's just been that model of consistency year over year. It gives me the opportunity to select a second quarterback that might be a little bit more higher upside. It's just someone I know I can count.
Yeah, nice. Goff in round 5. That's as early as I've seen you pick him for sure. So I expect to see him move up your rankings after doing that.
Yeah, there's a couple guys I'm kind of toying with here, and looking at the other positions, I really like Kenneth Walker. I like Kamara quite a bit too. He's got a couple gaps between those two in my rankings. And the wide receiver position, Devontae Adams, he's an interesting one, but given the fact I already have Puka, I'm not going to double load up there and play against you 1 week and watch Kyron score 3 touchdowns. So I think what I'm going to do is just take the quarterback that I was talking about having a spot above Goff and go with Drake May here. And I know so far I actually really like this build because I'm getting 2 quarterbacks in my top 11 while being loaded at the wide receiver position and having someone in Chase Brown that's potentially a hero RB.
Yeah, no, I definitely like the build of the hero RB, and that shows, I guess, as well, just to highlight, in 10-team Superflex leagues, that's why you're able to wait. It's definitely something where if you strike while the iron's hot right there, everybody else has got a quarterback but is still kind of trying to fill out the rest of their roster and waiting for maybe a back end 2 quarterback. You go quarterback right there in 5 and 6, and all of a sudden you're set at the position and can continue to build out your running back room after the fact. So I like that quite a bit. This part of the draft right here is exactly why I like to wait at running back, because look at these top 3. You got Walker, Mixon, and Travion Henderson, who I would all be loving if this was my first or even my second running back. But since I already kind of filled in 2 running back spots, I don't know that I want to go straight to the flex before I have another receiver and before I have another quarterback. So we got to check in on the other positions here. So seeing Devontae Adams, I think we both agree that he's the top guy on the board. He's the only guy left that I have in my top 20 personally ranks. And then at quarterback, it's Dak Prescott, and then kind of a lot of So I could see going with Dak there too. So I'm definitely feeling the heat a little bit more at receiver than I am at quarterback, since I've got a solid one in Daniels. So I'm not going to go to the quarterback position, and I'm going to take Devontae Adams.
Good
All
pick.
these running backs that I love are going to go off here. Yep, all three of them went. But that being said, right, I'm not super concerned about my flex spot yet at this point in the draft. And the quarterback I was debating also fell, which is why I kind of waited just to see what would happen. And so I feel really good about getting Dak in round 7. I feel like the start to this team is excellent. Now I just need tight end and flex. But the receivers, I feel like, rounded out really well for going running back in round 3 and 4. I'm really liking this start.
Yeah, and this makes this next pick so obvious to me. It's James Conner. I mean, we've talked about this at length. When he's on the field, he's a top 12 running back. So obviously getting older, but we saw, pretty much a full healthy season last year, and he was a stud. So that was very easy for me. Now looking at the other running backs, Caleb Johnson, David Montgomery, those are kind of the last 2 guys that I would be in on here. Let's take a peek at the wide receivers. You got Rome, Jameson, Cortland. A lot of these guys kind of in a similar tier. Now, I think what I'll do is address running back with the idea that, that will be my flex player. Now I've got a full roster minus the tight end. And as much as I love Monty's stability, and I talked about stability, at length with Jared Goff, I'm just incredibly excited about Caleb Johnson this year. I just think that there's a lot of volume to be had, given the fact that Najee's gone. But I did hear something interesting the other day, and something I hadn't necessarily thought about, where, the fact that he is a rookie, if he misses an assignment or doesn't pick up a blitz or runs the wrong way, like, he's going to have a pretty short leash with Aaron Rodgers. So that does scare me a little bit, but I just think he's someone that I was so in on in the pre-draft process. And the fact that he goes to this system, I think it's going to be really good for him.
Yeah, I've been a little bit more concerned lately for redraft purposes, not for dynasty, but for redraft purposes, that Warren is going to start as the lead back. And if that happens, it's going to be really tough for Johnson to take over a big portion of the work, right? Obviously he's going to be out there, but if Warren is going to be looked at as the lead rusher, even if he's 10 carries, that's way too many for Caleb Johnson to be relevant, because we do know Warren is going to be the pass catcher of the 2. So for me, if it's going to be Warren out there on third downs and splitting early down work, I'm very, very concerned to start the year, and I will be following that very closely, because as again, we talked about Warren, back when I did the early, middle, and late round picks, because I got Warren a ton in round 12, and apparently I just really love him. For my pick here, I feel like there's a lot of wide receivers that I like. Obviously, with Jonnu moving on, I think Waddle is a much better pick at this point. Olave is still the one there, and that could be an interesting pick. Cortland Sutton, I feel like, is probably the safest and would be the way I go, but Jameson Williams also has all kinds of upside. So those would be the 4 that I'd be looking at this point. Like, obviously, any of these guys would be solid, I feel like. So I'm going to look to the running back position, where you mentioned it, but I'll hammer home the point. David Montgomery feels by far the safest here. And so, he's somebody that I feel confident about plugging and playing. It's somebody that if one of my running backs gets hurt, I'll feel very confident about starting him as my 2. And just take a peek at the tight ends here. Unfortunately, as much as I love Warren, I do wish I could get him a little later, because there's just so many good tight ends down in this range too. So I'm definitely going to be locking in David Montgomery here.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see how high Warren is on Sleeper versus other platforms, which I know you're very in on him this year. I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's getting tough at his ADP.
Yeah, which the reason it's getting tough, especially in a format where you start this many players, is because I still am looking for my 4th wide receiver at this point. And the 4th wide receiver in a format like this is so much more important than if you're playing in a 2 wide receiver league. So, at this point, obviously there's still a lot of names on here that I like quite a bit, but I would like to get 2 of these guys at this point. So I'm going to go in on Jameson Williams here. He's the one that I am getting the most excited about. I've moved Chris Godwin down quite a bit. We're going to talk about him in the rankings faller video when we do come out with that. And Williams will be in the risers, because I do feel pretty good about getting him as my 4. And I just love having the upside as my first player on my bench.
I was thinking about taking Waddle there. I was ready to have a back and forth conversation on him, but we'll save that for another day. Looking at the other wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, he's definitely someone I'm interested in. Jacoby Myers, I've got ranked pretty highly as well. Take a peek at the running backs, Swift, Pollard, B-Rob, Tight end, again, Warren's still there. Someone I will be targeting a little bit later and have been targeting is David Njoku, but he's far enough down this board that I don't think that the computer or, necessarily your league mates that are following Sleepers rankings will be in on at this point. So I will go here with play the ADP game a little bit. I'll go with Ridley. I think, it'll be exciting to see him not play with Will Levis. We know he doesn't have as many miles on him for his age as some of the other wide receivers. So he's someone I like quite a bit this year. And I know we had him quite above ADP last year. And I think he finished like one spot below where we ended up having him ranked. But again, we should see a huge upgrade at QB. And then what I'll do next, what I was going to do beforehand, is take Mr. Tried and True, Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, there he is. And, Myers.
Death taxes and Jacoby Myers on one of our mock drafts.
Yeah, exactly. And, I do expect him to go above that, honestly, in drafts where people are paying attention. In our home league, I expect him to go earlier than this. His situation hasn't changed much, except for he got much better at quarterback and they got a running game. So I feel like it's just additional attention off him. He didn't get a ton of targets last year either. You look at his player card. I know he missed a couple games, and I know we talk about Myers a lot, but I just can't buy it, right? I mean, he missed 2 games. He still was position ranked 19 and still broke 1,000 yards, only 4 touchdowns, right? But he did it on 129 targets. And, if you extrapolate that out over the full season, and on top of that, you know that the offense is going to be better, maybe it's a little more run heavy and that's where it sticks. And then, you feel like you have a top 25 receiver, but the rest of it is just additional upside, I feel like. So he's somebody where I can't figure out. I feel like he's got a super safe floor and decent amount of upside. Another guy that we'll talk about in our rankings risers when we do come out with that video. All right, so going into the 10th round here now, I still need a tight end. And unfortunately, Warren was the only one that went between our picks, right? So I was very optimistic there. And the 2 guys that stand out here now to me are Evan Engram and David Njoku. I do think that those 2 stand up above the rest of these guys. Mark Andrews, unless he scores a bunch of touchdowns again, I just am not that interested in him, especially with, the possibility that he falls behind on the depth chart. So, if that is something, if there is any merit to Isaiah Likely getting more and more and more and more involved, I don't know. I'm not interested in doing that again as my lead tight end. He's not somebody I feel like I have as a set and forget tight end the same way I do Engram and Njoku. So that's my quick rundown on the tight ends. I'm going to wait at the position. As much as I'd like to take a quarterback, I don't expect Penix is going to be here to lock in my quarterback position. I feel pretty good about a lot of these guys for this year. So that lands me back at the running back or the wide receiver position here. So obviously Jaylen Warren talked about earlier, really like him. But, the guy I'm going to go with here is maybe the only wide receiver in San Francisco that's not disgruntled, and that'll be Ricky Pearsall. I mean, now you got Jennings asking for a contractor to be traded, and Ayuk still hurt, Debo out of town. It's just like, okay, well, is it just going to be Ricky or nobody? So I'm going to take that chance now, and I'm going to continue to take that chance until we get some more clarity in that wide receiver room.
Yeah, he's a great pick right now.
Yeah, so then going down to now, so Jonnu and Andrews go, right? And that's a little bit why I was talking about the tight ends the way I was, is I felt like I had 2 of them that I like, and then that there was like a bunch of names in between there too. So I do have Njoku ranked ahead of Evan Engram, even though it's not super far and away clear cut, right? I mean, we do know that Peyton loves to use his tight ends, so Engram is somebody I might continue to move up, but David Njoku right now is somebody that I do believe in a lot. And if it's Flacco, we already know what Flacco can do with Njoku. And, as long as he's there, Njoku's going to be a top 5 tight end, like locked in for sure. And if it changes, then you figure out your tight end position if he's not producing after Flacco, cedes the job to Sanders or to Dylan Gabriel or whoever else it is. So I'm going to go with Njoku to start the year.
That's so annoying because that's who I was going to pick. I thought you were going to go with Engram there. Dang it. Okay. Looking at the running back position, again, just kind of a bunch of names in a tier that I'm not super interested in. Someone at the wide receiver position. Bummer. Golden went off the board. I didn't see that. Jaden Reed. I take Jaden Reed in best ball from time to time, but he's just so inconsistent. But I will go with Steph Diggs here again. Pair him with Drake May. He's not someone I necessarily have to start, but if that connection hits, I can play the stacks and hope build off some big weeks. And then looking at the other, who else is left on the tight end board? Tucker Kraft. Man, I don't want to end up in just tight end hell. I feel like Tucker Kraft is. I also don't want to feel like I'm reaching here either. Let's go back to running back and at least take someone who, as of now, is the starter on what should be a good offense. And if he gets a little bit healthier, he's someone that I think can definitely play higher than his ADP in Javonte Williams.
Yeah, and that's definitely a great pick. He said he feels healthy for the first time since his injury, right? And it was something where I can kind of buy that because he had one of the most gruesome injuries a running back can get, just destroyed his knee. And so, he didn't really make it all the way back the first year. And then last year he was back on the field, but it was still noticeably slower. And then now this offseason, he finally said he feels healthy, back in his offseason routine like he was 2 years ago. And it just feels like that's something that you can buy. And then looking at him specifically, I feel like we have forgotten maybe that he's only 25 years old. It's not like he's been around that long. So, you look at his rookie year when he was RB17, didn't really get the job until early, and then he got hurt, and he hadn't scored any touchdowns yet, but he was still playing pretty well, right? 4.5 carry, still involved in the passing game. He got 70 targets last year. And if that's going to be any indication of his role in Dallas, like he's going to be a steal down here. Now, if he cedes any work to Jalen Blue, obviously that's going to limit what he can do. But, if he is the lead guy and they give him a lot of work, he's going to be somebody that you're going to turn around and be like, dude, why was I not drafting him? He is an excellent 0 RB target, in my opinion, because I think at the beginning of the year, plugging him in as an RB2, you could do much worse. I think Isaiah Pacheco early in the year is going to get ranked behind Javonte Williams, and he's going 2 or 3 rounds earlier. It's just not something I would be doing at that point at running back, going in on Pacheco. All right, so let's get off your pick and let's get over to my pick now. So at this point in the draft, this is always when I'm starting to look for that third quarterback, right? You're in the 12th round. The chances that a run starts in the 11th or 12th round, right? You got your first or maybe even your second bench player. And for me, for example, I've got J-Mo and I've got Pearsall on my bench already. And then I locked in Njoku. So I could go in on a bench running back and kind of lock in my 4th running back. But again, feels like a lot of sameness there. So in general, you're not going to be able to lock in Michael Penix in round 12, but the point stands that maybe it's a Matthew Stafford or a Tua or, Aaron Rodgers, something like that. Anybody that is kind of left, maybe Cam Ward is left. But this is the point in the draft where you want to be definitely looking to lock in that third quarterback. And I'm going to do it with Penix there. Oh man, Kupp goes. I'm higher on Kupp than everybody. I thought about taking Kupp instead of Pearsall, and obviously the team build didn't go back to wide receiver, but Kupp is somebody that I just can't kick. I just refuse to believe that he's washed, and he was so good until the last 3 games of the season last year, and he's going to be playing in the slot role that has been valuable in that offense. I think Darnold is good enough to get him the ball, and I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a top end producer. Now that's always been the key because you look at him specifically and it's just a train wreck the last couple of years in terms of games played. I mean, he obviously went off for the Triple Crown and then it's 9, 12, and 12. And it's just dude has not been able to stay on the field at all. But you can even see in his 12 games, right? I mean, it's 100 targets. And so you extrapolate that out with 5 extra games and it's oh my God, he was almost on a 150 target pace. So again, I get it. Okay. If you don't like Kupp, you think he's too much of an injury risk, fine. But when he's out there, you're going to feel compelled to play him. You're going to feel like you possibly have a top 20 player. And the other thing is, he came out last year as a 6th or 7th round pick. And then look at what he did in his first game, right? It was just boom, 21 targets. It's oh, okay. So he's still Cooper Kupp. So I just am so afraid of that happening again that I would rather it be on my team than on somebody else's. All right,
I really hope you're right.
Yeah, I hope so too. I haven't been a dynasty league. I probably shouldn't have taken him in. So I do hope I'm right as well there. Somebody I'm going to go to though is Jordan Mason. I know it's kind of chalk because it's top of the board, but they brought him in, signed him to a 2-year extension. I do think that there's some merit here that he could score some rushing touchdowns. Aaron Jones had way too many touches last year too. I know we talk about it in the scope of oh, this is bad for Aaron Jones, but it's I don't know that we expected Aaron Jones to be as dominant in terms of number of touches and percent of snaps played as he was last year, it was like, oh, they literally have brought in Cam Akers to try and take some pressure off him. So I do expect Mason to be out there and scoring some touchdowns. And, if anything were to happen to Jones at any time, Mason has showed that he can carry the load on an offense, and Minnesota's a great offense.
Yeah, and Jones was just like historically inefficient at the goal line. Just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying with the quarterbacks, I think the way that I built my team with the stability of Goff, the upside, but a little bit of unknown with May, I'm just going to go with Matthew Stafford here because, he's definitely someone, if I get in a pinch, I know is a very good player on a very good team. Now, swinging back around.
Gotta love the Stafford pick, right? Just always going back to your boy Stafford.
Always going back to my guy. And unfortunately, tight end has been pretty depleted. So I might just wait, maybe even take a couple with my last two picks, depending on who's on the board here. Now, there's a few players. One specifically I want to call out who I think is definitely going to rise at the running back position is J.K. Dobbins. I think especially in the beginning of the year, he's going to be on the field quite a bit for running downs. And I think, he showed last year with the Chargers before injury that he's still got it. We know he's injury prone, but I think he's someone that can definitely pay dividends this late.
Yeah, I think he'll be out there for sure. They're not going to just turn it over to the full workload to Harvey. That was never going to be the plan. I think he's a solid complement. And if anything were to happen to Harvey, he can step in for a couple weeks. Same thing with Dobbins. If Harvey needs to carry the load for a couple weeks, I think they complement each other really well in that offense. Something that I've been highlighting a little bit more is the Jacksonville backfield here. And Etienne being a 10th round pick, and then like Tootin and Bigsby being 14th, 15th round picks, I don't know that I fully understand that. I've kind of been of the mind that take one of them, take your favorite one. And Bigsby was better than Etienne on early downs, and they were looking to trade Etienne. And obviously Liam Cohen came out and said, I can't believe anybody was saying that. And it's like, well, okay, now you're defending your guy because you got nothing for him. I do think it's a little bit interesting that Bigsby, the guy that we know is the better runner and the guy that was the better runner last year, is just again getting buried in these rankings. And so, I think you should take a shot on one, because if there is a chance that any of them emerge and they just happen to be the guy you threw on your team at the, in the 14th round, I think that's definitely a shot worth taking. New offense. We know the coach is really good. And, if Bigsby steps into more of the Bucky role, obviously that could be awesome for the scheme fit. And we know Tootin has had a little bit of fumbling problems. So, Bigsby is definitely my favorite one of that trio to pick for here.
That scares me for sure. I was way more in on him before that, and he had issues with that in college too.
Yeah. So I'm looking, right. I have 5 running backs already, and I usually like to only go in on 4, but I'm going to go in on one more just to highlight the unfortunate situation that we're dealing with here. And I'm going to pick Dylan Sampson. Quinshon Judkins, if you haven't heard, has been in trouble, and I'm sure you've heard by now, right? So he got into a domestic violence dispute, which is not obviously great, but from a fantasy football perspective, which is what this channel is for, he hasn't signed yet. And now he has this dispute and this legal issue, and we don't know what's going to happen at this point in the offseason. So obviously follow that story. And if he signs and if he makes it to camp, but we're like 3 days out from camp, he hasn't signed. And if he doesn't, it's going to be Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford. And Sampson is absolutely somebody at this point right now that you can't lose track of. He definitely should be a top 100 pick pending this Quinshon Judkins situation. So I'm going to take him here in the 15th round.
And Sampson's also really good. I know those Tennessee guys, they kind of get a bad rap because their system's a little bit weird, but he's extremely talented. So I think that's a really good call out. And then for me, I'll probably end up double dipping at tight end. But what I will do for first and kind of safety, and a player who had a really good season last year and outperformed expectations and is on a good offense is Zach Ertz. Now, he's getting older. Wheels could fall off. I'm not necessarily sure the team believes in Ben Sinnott because they re-signed Ertz, but I do want to take a shot on Mason Taylor swinging back around. We know in this Jets passing system right now, it's really just Garrett Wilson, and they bring in Mason Taylor. Although, it may not be a prolific offense, if he establishes himself as the number 2 in that offense, there's definitely going to be some value in there.
Yeah, nice. I can't believe you took Ertz after this past weekend with Gavin hyping up Ertz, and we were all just coming down on him like, dude, you're gonna take Ertz? Come on, dude. Nobody wants Ertz, and then you just take him right now. I love it.
Some of our late night fantasy arguments are a little bit fuzzy. So
Yeah, nice. So let's take a deep look at the receiver position here, right? Because I do feel like some of these names could get lost in the shuffle, right? You're constantly prepping, you're looking at the top of the lists, or the top of the rankings. And so, you scroll down and you take a look just in general, right? And see who you find. And so, the only name so far that kind of stood out is one that I think I'm going to pick, and that's Keenan Allen. And I hate that he's buried so low, and he's going to jump as soon as he signs, assuming he does, right? He's at 217 overall. But, right, I mean, we just heard Trey Harris hasn't signed, Mike Williams starting on the pup, right? And they start seeing the Woody meme of the eyes coming up like Keenan Allen getting ready to re-sign with the Chargers. So I'm going to take him. And I do think, again, it's important for the guys that haven't signed. Another one's Amari Cooper. As soon as and if he signs, it's going to be really hard to imagine that he's not getting drafted. So getting in front of that, making sure you have those names on your radar, especially at this point in the offseason, I think is super important. So I just wanted to highlight Keenan Allen there.
yeah, I have a dangerous amount of him in best ball, so I hope it happens soon.